The market bustled with activity as merchants hawked fresh vegetables and chopped meat for the passing crowds. One vendor loudly advertised the arrival of demonic halberd pig, urging everyone to grab a piece before it vanished. Meng Chao's mother, Suxin, navigated the busy stalls until a merchant tried to interest her in some pork bones. A plump acquaintance spotted her and immediately cornered her, demanding an opinion on the quality of the tubular bones she had just purchased. Knowing the woman loved to brag and would trap her in a long, tedious conversation, Suxin offered a polite compliment on the haul and steered the topic toward Old Lee's bonus. The woman sighed, lamenting that her husband earned too little for any extra pay, but quickly pivoted to the real reason for her excitement. Her son, Ming, had just ranked 32nd in the 11th high school during the first stage of the national college examination, securing his spot in the re-examination. Suxin felt a wave of worry and confusion at the mention of the exam. The woman feigned ignorance of Meng Chao's struggles from the previous year, offering a backhanded comfort by suggesting he would surely land in a decent vocational college. She insisted that since the boys were childhood friends, Ming would look out for Meng Chao once he made it into university. Suxin forced a smile and offered congratulations on Ming's intelligence before the woman hurried off to start dinner. The moment she left, Suxin's expression darkened. She checked how many bones the woman had bought and, upon learning it was 3, decided to purchase 4 for herself. Back at home, Bai Jiakao stared at the ingredients on the table with wide eyes and a drooling mouth, questioning if they were really going to cook all of it. Lao Meng noticed the massive 5 or 6 pound fish and asked what special occasion warranted such a feast. Suxin confirmed it was the day of the first stage of the national college exam. Since Meng Chao had remained silent about his results, she assumed he had performed poorly and warned the family to keep their questions to themselves and focus on the meal. Bai Jiakao brushed off the concern, declaring that if her brother failed to get into college, she would simply become a superhuman and protect the entire family. She giggled at the thought of Meng Chao eventually submitting to her authority, imagining a scenario where he clung to her leg in tears, begging for her protection, and admitting he had underestimated her all along. Suxin pinched the girl's nose, reminding her that the rule about staying quiet was meant specifically for her. She did not mind the usual bickering, but she insisted that Bai Jiakao avoid upsetting her brother on such a difficult day. Bai Jiakao nodded in agreement. The front door swung open as Meng Chao stepped inside, his expression dark and heavy with the realization of just how ruthless the Yan group truly was. Their willingness to unleash such thunderous methods over a simple matter of trouble weighed on his mind, leaving him to gnaw on his finger while he contemplated the need for extreme caution regarding his identity as the old fire relayer. Nearby, Bai Jiakao watched him with a skeptical eye, convinced he had performed poorly on his exam, a sentiment that Lao Meng silently echoed with a nod. Suxin broke the tension by placing a steaming bowl of rice on the table and beckoning everyone to eat. The table groaned under the weight of a lavish spread featuring tubular bones, fish, and other premium ingredients from the market. Meng Chao stared in genuine surprise, wondering if the military had raided another nest of demonic halberd pigs, or if pork prices had plummeted overnight. Lao Meng insisted that he eat regardless of the cost, though the insistence only left Meng Chao scratching his head in confusion. He questioned the strange atmosphere, but Lao Meng offered an awkward laugh and claimed their business flourished lately, leaving no room for concern. Suxin chimed in with a sly laugh, teasing him for being a natural worrier. Bai Jiakao threw an arm around his shoulder, laughing as she promised to become the pillar of the family soon. The prospect of her taking on that role left Meng Chao looking visibly horrified at the thought of the chaos that would surely follow. He shifted the topic to his own news, announcing that the first stage of the national college exam had concluded and he had secured a rank around 8th or 9th in the entire school. He confirmed he passed and would head to the regional education department in 10 days for the second stage. The family offered polite, stiff smiles, clearly struggling to process the magnitude of the news before offering some generic encouragement. The moment the reality of his achievement finally sank in, however, their expressions shifted to pure, unadulterated astonishment. A heavy silence filled the room, punctuated only by the awkward gust of wind that seemed to blow through their stunned expressions. Bai Jiakao asked for clarification on whether he meant 8th in the class, but he corrected her, noting it was 8th in the entire school. He teased her about her hearing failing at such a young age, but she burst into tears. overwhelmed by the realization that he could finally enter college and become a superhuman. He looked on, baffled by her sudden emotional outburst. She sobbed about how ninth high school was a key institution where the top 10 students were practically guaranteed a path to becoming superhumans. Her tears flowed freely as she lamented the death of her dream to bully him, leaving him horrified as he realized his suspicions about her true motivations were correct all along. Lao Meng interrupted the scene to ask if he had fully recovered from his injuries. While Bai Jiakao continued to cry, he explained that the combination of the ripple force cultivation, genetic potions, and nutritional fluid from Ning Shenwo had allowed him to heal just in time for the exam. Though Lao Meng remained focused on the fact that he had been active on the dark web, Meng Chao winked at Lao Meng and brushed off the details, insisting that college admission was a certainty and there was no reason to worry. Lao Meng caught the drift immediately and grinned in agreement, calling him the best. Suxin watched the exchange with a touched expression and snapped a photo of Meng Chao. When he questioned the sudden photography, she beamed and countered that he looked too handsome that day to pass up the opportunity. Bai Jiakao laughed while checking her phone and urged him to look at Suxin's social media feed. Meng Chao stared in horror at the post, which featured his photo alongside a caption downplaying his performance as merely average. The text claimed he barely scraped into the top 10 at ninth high school and needed to grind harder for Dragon City University, justifying the purchase of expensive food as nourishment. Suxin even commented on her own post about the high cost of the bones, noting that 4 of them set her back 120, and Meng Chao noticed that Lao Meng and Bai Jiakao had already liked the post with impressive speed. He begged her to delete the photo to save his remaining dignity, but she sulked and defended her right to boast about his results. She argued that she told the truth without exaggerating his rank, so there was no reason for him to feel embarrassed. Her mood shifted to irritation as she recounted a run-in with a plump lady at the market who bragged endlessly about her son placing in the top 40 at 11th high school. Suxin brightened again, noting that she had stayed humble despite his top 10 finish at 9th high school, and she challenged him to admit that she was far less smug than that neighbor. Meng Chao felt cornered and turned to Lao Meng for backup, but the older man refused to intervene. Lao Meng looked genuinely anxious while recalling how Suxin once promoted their small resource recovery company as if he were the chairman of a massive corporation, leaving him too embarrassed to face their neighbors even now. The revelation caused Meng Chao to spit out his drink in surprise. Suxin remained oblivious to their distress, preoccupied with the 15 likes on her post and the satisfaction that the neighbor had seen it. Bai Jiakao shoved her phone toward him to show the growing comment section. People were already asking about his recovery from recent injuries and praising his lifelong intelligence, with one aunt even requesting a visit so he could tutor her child. Bai Jiakao looked delighted by his visible discomfort. Meng Chao realized that moving out of the neighborhood was an urgent financial necessity. She teased him about his newfound fame in the blessed heavenly garden, and he felt a surge of motivation to start making money so they could finally relocate. After dinner, Lao Meng finished cleaning the dishes. As he returned to the living room, Suxin celebrated hitting another 30 likes on her post, leaving both him and Bai Jiakao in awe. Bai Jiakao grabbed the remote and suggested they settle in for some television since Suxin was in such high spirits. Meng Chao interrupted to mention that he had already made an appointment for the following Saturday with a famous doctor at the Feng Shui Medical Center to have Suxin's legs examined, and he insisted they all go together. Lao Meng and Suxin exchanged a look, both well aware that the center was famous for its top-tier technology and equally top-tier prices. Suxin argued that she was doing better than before and saw no reason to waste money, suggesting a government hospital instead so the costs could be reimbursed. Meng Chao countered that government facilities lacked the super-alloy bionic joints she needed. Suxin immediately protested the massive expense, noting that she had lived this way for over 20 years and could still walk, even if she was a bit slower and her posture was less than graceful. She questioned if he still found her lacking, but he assured her that her financial worries were temporary, as his future earnings as a superhuman would make the cost trivial. Lao Meng stepped in to remind Suxin that their son had grown up and they should trust his judgment, promising to be there if things did not work out. After confirming this plan with Lao Meng, Suxin grew bashful and recalled that she had not danced with him in years. Meng Chao promised that once her legs were treated, he would book a hall in the city's most lavish hotel for a private candlelit dinner, complete with a live band so she could dance to her heart's content. Bai Jiakao was left in awe by the display of confidence, though her inner guardian quickly smacked her in the head to remind her that such a display from the demon, Meng Chao, was surely just an illusion. The next morning at the Feng Shui Medical Center, the doctor reviewed Suxin's file, noting that her condition stemmed from joint necrosis and nerve atrophy caused by prolonged compression under rubble. But he assured them that modern technology made it a manageable issue. As he prepared to examine her, he asked her to report any discomfort. He closed his eyes, and as he released a surge of aura, glowing marks appeared across his face, and his eyes shifted to reveal 4 irises. He began the examination by transferring his aura into her legs, which prompted Suxin to remark on the pleasant sensation of qi flowing through her limbs. Bai Jiakao whispered to Meng Chao that the doctor looked incredibly strange, but he shushed her and insisted there was nothing unusual about the sight. He explained that when spirit energy gathered in a human body, it flowed through the vessels and nerves to manifest as beautiful, complex spirit tattoos on the skin, which served as the mark of a 1-star superhuman. He added that once a person reached the 2-star level of spirit transformation, their organs would undergo even more amazing changes, making minor physical quirks like polychoria seem trivial compared to the possibility of someone sprouting wings. Su Yuan poured his spiritual energy into a spirit transformation, clearly pushing himself to the limit. Watching this display, Bai Jiakao wondered why he avoided the standard government hospital scanners for Suxin. Meng Chao explained that 3-star superhumans reached a state of spirit gathering, which allowed them to peer directly into their own organs for a complete internal assessment. At the 4-star spirit-wielding level, they could manipulate spiritual energy to create precise, stable vibrations that extended their life magnetic field. This mastery even allowed them to reject the planet's magnetic pull and hover in mid-air. 5-star superhumans reached the spirit gaze state, granting them the ability to use their magnetic fields to sense the organs, blood vessels, nerves, and bones of others. Since Su Yuan operated at that 5-star level, he had no need for X-rays or MRIs. The sheer scale of the superhuman world left Bai Jiakao completely amazed. After the examination, Su Yuan noted that Suxin was in decent condition, though her 20-year-old injury would require time for a full recovery. He handed a tablet to Meng Chao, recommending a specific treatment plan involving bionic bone and nerve reconstruction. The technology was unfamiliar to Meng Chao, so Su Yuan clarified that it was the latest breakthrough from the Monster Research Center. By utilizing the high regenerative properties of monster cells, the process activated the body's genetic potential. The newly grown bone cells and nerves integrated perfectly without any risk of rejection, allowing patients to return to heavy physical labor or even pursue cultivation and combat. Meng Chao studied the tablet while Suxin worried about the cost, and Meng Chao questioned the safety of such advanced tech. Su Yuan admitted that no medical procedure was entirely foolproof, but the military and supernatural sectors had already vetted the process, helping countless wounded soldiers regain their strength for the front lines. He assured Suxin that as long as she avoided extreme kicking techniques or sprinting at superhuman speeds, the recovery would be smooth. Meng Chao immediately agreed to the plan, which startled Suxin. She grabbed his shirt in a panic, apologizing to Su Yuan while demanding to know the price. Su Yuan offered to secure a special promotional discount of 60%, bringing the total to 3 million, provided they granted him the rights to use her portrait for advertisements. The sheer magnitude of that price left Suxin, Bai Jiakao, and Lao Meng in a state of shock. Su Yuan then sweetened the deal, offering to drop the cost to 2 million if Meng Chao agreed to demonstrate the 7 dissection methods formed in reverse. The group stood frozen in horror, mouths agape at the request, but Meng Chao nonchalantly accepted the terms. The payment would be split into 4 installments over 7 to 8 months, with an initial deposit of 500,000. Meng Chao confirmed the deal with total confidence. Suxin worried over the high cost of the treatment and pushed for cheaper superalloy joints instead. Meng Chao insisted that she listen to him on this matter to avoid any distractions before his college entrance examination. Taken aback by his firm stance, she struggled to find a rebuttal. Melancholy filled her eyes as she realized her legs were suddenly worth a fortune. He brushed off the concern by noting that every member of their family was priceless. The 3 of them felt deeply touched by his words. Shortly after, Su Yuan reminded Meng Chao to ensure Suxin arrived for her treatment on time. Meng Chao confirmed the schedule and expressed his gratitude. Su Yuan credited the 7 reverse dissection methods for his recent breakthroughs and predicted a bright future for the young man. The system chimed in to notify Meng Chao that his guidance had granted Su Yuan a new understanding of surgery, resulting in a gain of 49 contribution points. As the family waved goodbye and headed toward the parking lot, Bai Jiakao caught sight of an antique vehicle. Her eyes twinkled with excitement as she identified the car as a Wuling Hongguang and marveled at its style. Meng Chao understood her reaction, as private cars were symbols of nobility in that era, and none existed within the blessed heavenly garden. He seized the moment to ask Lao Meng if he liked the vehicle, promising to buy one for the family once he became a superhuman. Lao Meng dismissed the idea, arguing that 3D mobile gear was more practical for climbing buildings and that wasting money on a car was unnecessary. Meng Chao countered that a car was essential for maintaining appearances during future business deals. Although Lao Meng struggled to hide his excitement, he insisted they discuss it later and noted that a Wuling Hongguang was far too lavish for their family. Meng Chao suggested a mighty dragon instead. While Lao Meng drifted into a daydream, Meng Chao acknowledged that even with his status as a reborn human, driving such a flashy car would attract too much attention. Suddenly, Bai Jiakao radiated an ominous aura as she realized she had been left out. She grabbed Meng Chao with a sweet, sugary tone to demand her own gift, pointing out that he had already promised a car to Lao Meng and the best treatment for Suxin. Meng Chao assured her that he had already asked Ning Shenwo to find the most professional special interest classes to turn her into a cultured lady skilled in singing and dancing. The prospect left her visibly disgusted and cringing. 2 weeks passed, and a fleet of buses arrived at the Regional Education Department for the second level of undergraduate testing. Meng Chao sat on one of the buses and reviewed his fire system skills. Most were at the master or specialist level, while his basic gun technique reached the ultimate level. He checked his remaining contribution points, which sat at 233 after he redeemed over 20,000 points to prepare for the college entrance exam. As long as no accidents occurred, he felt confident about his chances. A classmate behind him tapped his shoulder and addressed him as the ace student, expressing shock that his own maximum punching strength exceeded 290 kg. Chu Feixiong looked annoyed and chimed in that his own strength reached 299 kg. But training with Meng Chao felt like being crushed by a roller. He insisted that Meng Chao definitely surpassed 300 kg and simply pretended to be weak. The other students glared at Meng Chao upon hearing this, calling him a shameless degenerate and demanding he treat them to every meal of the day. Meng Chao tried to remain calm while wondering why keeping a low profile felt so impossible lately. Teacher Yan suddenly interrupted the commotion and instructed the students to compose their spirits. He emphasized that while speed, strength, stamina, and strategy mattered, the most important trait for a superhuman was spirit. Without it, they risked becoming slaves to their own power and turning into monsters as terrifying as any zombie. He explained that the flower of their spirit existed beyond their physical bodies, meaning great strength did not automatically equate to a powerful spirit. One could never truly know their own nature without facing life and death. He described the difference between a coward with brute strength, a bully, or a selfish scoundrel. A vision of Teacher Yan appeared as he faced a monster with absolute determination. He grabbed the creature by its horns and ripped it in half, proving that one could be the absolute dictator of their own strength. The display looked incredibly cool, as if he tore the monster apart like a piece of paper. Back in reality, Teacher Yan ordered everyone off the bus upon their arrival at the Regional Education Department. The students stepped out and surveyed the area. A huge, distorted building stood before them. It was a ruin preserved from the past, unlike other sites that were cleared and rebuilt into steel fortresses as Dragon City expanded. The government hired artists and architects to solidify the structure as a memorial to those dark days. Meng Chao and his peers walked through a hallway lined with statues depicting the horrors of that era. He stared at a statue with a dark expression and clenched his fist, swearing that he would never allow demons or ghosts to invade the land again. The group continued forward into a tunnel. Chu Feiqiang and Meng Chao paused to look at a painting featuring various superhumans. Meng Chao remarked that they would soon be just like them. The group passed beneath massive pillars inscribed with prayers for the fallen and the brave before stepping into the Crossing Memorial Hall. A recorded tour guide filled the air, explaining how the first decade after Dragon City transmigrated to this new world was a period of pure chaos and misery known as the Bloody Era. Murals on the walls depicted the city in ruins, stripped of its energy resources and industrial capacity, while the very foundations of societal order crumbled. As the narration continued, it described how civilized people were forced to abandon their humanity, turning into savage ruffians who preyed upon the weak just to survive. A mysterious virus soon swept through the population, turning the city into a breeding ground for a horrific pandemic. Meng Chao watched the displays with a heavy heart as the audio recounted how those hiding among the broken walls feared the total extinction of their civilization. The scene shifted to footage of the aftermath, where zombie-like figures hunted the uninfected through the streets. Chaos reigned as the infected closed in on their prey, yet the voiceover shifted its tone to declare that this nightmare was actually the crucible for a new Dragon City. While the virus created countless monsters, it also triggered a mutation that unlocked human genes, granting survivors the ability to absorb spiritual energy and evolve into superhumans. The screen flashed with images of a man wreathed in intense flames, prompting Chu Feiqiong to point him out with excitement as Lei Zhongchao, the legendary battle god and strongest superhuman in the city. Another figure appeared, whom Chu Feiqiong identified as Yun Feidan, the wealthiest man in the city. Meng Chao stared in awe at the history of these martyrs who fought their way out of such a desperate reality, feeling a surge of determination that he and his brothers could achieve the same greatness. He urged Chu Feiqiong to move toward the next level, while his friend remained distracted by the artifacts left behind by the heroes. They descended a spiraling staircase into the gloom until a sliver of light signaled the arrival of the second decade. A tattered red flag hung before them as the tour guide announced the dawn of the Age of Heroes. Paintings of monsters 10 times more terrifying than the previous zombies lined the walls, but the narration emphasized that the citizens were no longer the confused, weak people they once were. Meng Chao studied the depictions of the expedition army and their written death wills, recognizing them as the strongest force Earth had ever produced. Chu Feiqiong hammered a fist into Meng Chao's back, declaring that Earthlings were the most brutal and powerful beings in existence, destined to rule not just this world, but the entire galaxy. Meng Chao questioned if that punch was a genuine show of camaraderie or a petty attempt at revenge for the beating he handed out during their sparring match a few days prior. Chu Feiqiong felt a surge of annoyance at the words of Meng Chao, but the tension dissipated as Meng Chao quickly pivoted to the next level of the tour. The automated voiceover explained how Dragon City entered an era of expedition and discovery during its third decade, a time when martial arts cultivation and spirit technology matured to the point that the Red Dragon Army eclipsed every military force on Earth. Deep beneath the city, ancient ruins yielded a treasure trove of new martial arts, runes, viruses, antibodies, and monsters, opening up an entirely new world for exploration. The fourth decade ushered in an era of construction where the monster threat waned and the city expanded with explosive intensity. Dragon City transformed into a massive three-dimensional metropolis with a surface area 5 times larger than the greatest cities on Earth, supported by superbrains that calculated 100 times faster than any terrestrial supercomputer. As the students moved into the next room for the 5th decade, Meng Chao stared upward in genuine amazement. The voiceover described this period as an aggressive era of victory and glory, highlighting how a new generation had risen to inherit the legacy of the martyrs. Meng Chao remained in awe as the narration declared that the future belonged to them and that the other world was destined to be theirs. While the group descended the stairs toward the next level, Meng Chao reflected on his previous life. He knew that a series of small, compounding mistakes had led to the eventual destruction of Dragon City, and he resolved to correct those errors, address his regrets, and forge the best possible path forward. Teacher Yan waited at the end of the tour, clutching a red flag and barking orders for the students to line up and display the spirit of 9th High School. He commanded them to make a right turn and led the group forward, while Meng Chao felt a firm conviction that they would achieve victory. Chu Feiqiong nudged Meng Chao to point out the flag of Construction High School nearby. Meng Chao dismissed the rival school as a mere district-level institution from the Tiger Forest region, questioning why Chu Feiqiong could not act more dominant. Another student chimed in to explain that the parents of those students were 4-star superstars, making them difficult to compare against. Meng Chao furrowed his brow when Chu Feixiong expressed surprise that superhumans were categorized by stars. Chu Feixiong realized he had slipped up when Meng Chao questioned if he spent time on deep web forums. Meng Chao clarified that the transcendent path was divided into 9 levels, with 1 to 3 stars representing the Earth realm, 4 to 6 stars the Heaven realm, and 7 to 9 stars the Deity realm, noting that this was common knowledge on the deep web. Chu Feixiong offered an awkward excuse about his mother forbidding him from the deep web due to its unhealthy content. Teacher Yan suddenly appeared and silenced Chu Feixiong with a sharp blow to the head, reminding everyone that the test was about to begin. A man took the stage to address the students, calling them the outstanding future hope of the Tiger Forest region. He emphasized that the road to becoming a superhuman was far more than a path to wealth and prosperity. It was a journey of guardianship tied to the lives of thousands of compatriots and the very survival of Dragon City. He urged the students to reflect on their journey there and consider seriously whether they truly wanted to pursue this path and why. Finding that answer was essential, as passing the mental test would be impossible without it. Teacher Yan then rolled out a cart filled with canisters and distributed them to the students. This special brain cell activator fluid was designed to develop the brain and increase its capacity to process external information, so he instructed them to consume it immediately before the 1-hour countdown to the test began. The man on stage told the students to rest in place while they listened to an introduction regarding the best undergraduate programs available. Ning Shui-shi stepped up to introduce herself as the Vice President of the Student Council for the Environmental Sciences and Resource Recovery Faculty at Dragon City Agricultural University. She began to highlight resource sciences as the premier major at her institution. Meng Chao drank the fluid from his canister as Ning Shui-shi explained that resources were the lifeblood of any civilization. Dragon City relied entirely on the excavation, utilization, and development of these materials for its survival. She touched upon the complexities of planting etherealized plants, modulating biochemical beasts, and gathering active minerals. While some might view these roles as simple harvesting, she insisted that reaching the pinnacle of any of these fields offered limitless potential. Meng Chao wondered why the university chose this specific moment to publicize their majors, as the presentation only made the students restless and unable to focus. A student nearby explained that this was an old tradition of the mental test, using the promise of money and material gain to stimulate the drive toward transcendence. Whether the students managed to remain calm was entirely their own responsibility, as maintaining composure under pressure was part of the evaluation. Meng Chao observed the stoic faces of the other students and acknowledged their superior mental training. His neighbor pointed out the obvious gap between the students from the top 2 high schools and those from the 9th high school. While the elite students remained calm and collected, the 9th high school group was rowdy and distracted. One student boasted about wanting to join the engineering university machinery course, convinced that the Steel Army would be the key to conquering the other world. Another countered that the superbrain department at the University of Science and Technology was superior, arguing that automated killing machines equipped with advanced intellects would ultimately become the main force for future conquest. Chu Feixiong pushed for a future at the military school, insisting that their combined strength and moral integrity guaranteed them at least 100 heroic spirits. Meng Chao urged him to calm down and focus on clearing the undergraduate line first. Since the Heroic Spirit Department was an elite course with sky-high entry requirements, while Meng Chao set his sights on the martial arts course at Dragon City University or the resource recovery major at Agricultural University, Chu Feixiong dismissed those ambitions as pure fantasy. A nearby student chimed in to confirm that those specific majors were the most competitive in the region, noting that even an ace student like Meng Chao faced daunting odds. The atmosphere shifted when someone pointed toward the students from Construction High School. A massive, hulking figure stood among them, looking far too old and developed to be a mere high schooler. The surrounding students explained that the region distributed cultivation resources based on school rankings following the mental test, which turned the event into a high-stakes display of power where the top dogs tried to crush the spirits of their rivals. The giant, identified as Jin Jianpeng, demanded that Meng Chao step forward for inspection. While the nearby student recoiled in horror, Zhang Lei stepped in front of Meng Chao to challenge the intruder. Jin Jianpeng recognized Zhang Lei and mocked his recent training progress, specifically bringing up an incident where he injured a weaker student. He proposed a competition during the upcoming mental test, and Zhang Lei accepted the challenge without hesitation. Jin Zhanpeng suddenly shifted into a fighting stance, causing Zhang Lei and Chu Feixiong to stumble back in genuine fear. After a moment, the giant offered a hollow apology for startling them, which only served to infuriate and embarrass Zhang Lei. Meng Chao interrupted the tension, calling out the absurdity of the display. He noted that while other powerhouses might act arrogant, they usually maintained a shred of honor, whereas Jin Zhanpeng chose to rely on cheap tricks despite his obvious physical advantage. When asked if he found such tactics amusing, the giant defended his behavior by comparing it to a lion hunting a rabbit, claiming that winning through wits was superior to brute force. Meng Chao laughed at the idea of equating dirty schemes with wisdom and demanded to know the real reason for the confrontation. The giant's expression darkened as he brought up Meng Chao's reputation for marksmanship and the crippling of Zhuo Haoran. Because Zhuo Haoran had been his apprentice at a local club, he wanted to see the person responsible for the injury. He loomed over Meng Chao, unleashing a heavy, menacing glare, but Meng Chao nonchalantly pushed the giant's face aside and apologized for not being accustomed to fighting with stares. Chu Feixiong and Zhang Lei watched in awe at the display of nerve. Jin Zhanpeng stood frozen in confusion, unable to comprehend how Meng Chao remained completely unfazed by a surge of killing intent that usually intimidated the top 10 students in his own school. A student from Construction High School interrupted the group to announce that Ning Shui from Agricultural University had arrived. Jin Zhanpeng reacted with immediate surprise, while Zhang Lei and Chu Feixiong watched in disbelief as Meng Chao frantically disinfected the hand he had used to touch Jin Zhanpeng's face. Jin Zhanpeng ignored the slight and began bragging about his close connection to Ning Shui, claiming their fathers conducted business together. He eventually led his group away, dismissing 9th High School as boring and insisting they return to hear whatever insights Ning Shui had to offer. Zhang Lei felt a wave of relief at the departure of the arrogant ace student and checked on Meng Chao, urging him to stay calm and wait for his own opportunity to shine. Both Zhang Lei and Chu Feixiong looked uneasy as Meng Chao insisted he had been calm the entire time and was only worried about Jin Zhanpeng suffering a breakdown later. Ning Shui suddenly appeared and greeted Meng Chao with a bright smile. He acknowledged her presence with a familiar title, and when Jin Zhanpeng attempted to interject with his own greeting, she walked right past him to focus entirely on Meng Chao. Jin Zhanpeng stood frozen in confusion, as the sight of their friendly interaction played on a loop in his mind, leaving him completely hollow. Meng Chao asked why she had traveled all the way to the Tiger Forest region, and she admitted she was there specifically to find him. She scanned him from head to toe, and with a bright smile, she confessed that she finally believed he was not dressing in rags to act humble for a future reveal, as his uniform was simply the worst one at 9th High School. While Meng Chao looked horrified by the blunt assessment, Chu Feixiong and Zhang Lei stood behind him, proudly flexing their own uniforms. Jin Zhanpeng tried to regain her attention by addressing her as his senior sister. She turned with a polite, formal smile to ask what he wanted, but the interaction only left him feeling like he was suffering a heart attack as the memory of her warmth toward Meng Chao shattered his ego. As the conversation continued, the surrounding students began to glare at Meng Chao with intense jealousy. Feeling the pressure of the crowd, which looked like a mob demanding milk tea, Meng Chao asked if she needed something specific. She explained that she had gathered information for him regarding the resource department at Agricultural University, assuming he intended to apply. She suggested they grab a meal after his second test so she could hand over the materials and introduce him to some seniors. Meng Chao noticed Chu Feixiong in a silent, fiery rage behind him, clearly demanding his own share of the attention, so he thanked her, while nervously admitting he had not yet decided on his future path. Ning Shui reacted with genuine shock, insisting that their resource recovery course provided the best standard education for harvesters and questioning where else he could possibly go. The atmosphere shifted instantly when a voice called out to Meng Chao, drawing the attention of every student nearby. They turned to see the Ripple Force princess, Yan Feiru, sprinting toward him, leaving the crowd, including Chu Feixiong, completely stunned and visibly drooling. Ning Shui watched in surprise, wondering how the two could possibly know each other. Yan Feiru reached out and carefully grabbed Meng Chao's hand to feel it, causing the surrounding students to glare daggers at him while Ning Shui turned bright red. Meng Chao broke into a sweat, and insisted that such public displays were inappropriate, but the students from Ninth High School remained furious, while the Construction High School group felt like they were being tortured by the sight. Yanferu leaned in close to whisper, asking if he was the one who provided the demonstration for the demonically modified ripple force seen in the video recently. She offered her thanks, noting that the Yan organization felt immense gratitude toward the old fire relayer for such a selfless contribution. Meng Chao realized with a shock that the hand-holding was merely a way to confirm his identity. He nearly fainted as he confirmed her suspicion, though he privately lamented that she should have chosen a dark, deserted spot for such an intimate check instead of causing a scene in public. Jin Zhanpeng turned away in defeat, though he could not stop himself from glancing back at their joined hands while tears welled in his eyes. Ning Shuishi nudged Yan Feiro to demand an explanation for her presence, and upon recognizing her, Yan Feiro expressed genuine surprise. She claimed to be there to suggest that Meng Chao register for the martial arts course at Dragon City University, given his obvious potential. Ning Shuishi maintained a smile, but her irritation was impossible to hide. When asked about their history, Yan Feiro explained that they became friends after Meng Chao suffered a training injury last year. Her grandfather had been developing the Yan Family Ripple Force version 2 and needed volunteers to test the data, leading to a year of close collaboration and shared study. She winked at Meng Chao to confirm the story, and he nodded vigorously in agreement. Yan Feiro smiled, satisfied that her grandfather's plan to help Meng Chao conceal the true source of his strength had succeeded. Ning Shuishi interjected, arguing that their friendship did not mean Meng Chao would choose a martial arts major. She insisted that his talent as a future ace harvester would make martial arts powerhouses beg for his services, and if he truly desired further training, he could simply double major at Dragon City Agricultural University. Yan Feiro could only snicker at the mention of the agricultural school. Ning Shuishi felt genuinely riled up by the recent actions of Yan Feiro and demanded an explanation, insisting that the Beast Soul style developed by their martial arts course stood perfectly on par with the overkill style favored by Dragon City University. This challenge hit a nerve, and as Ning Shuishi wore a smug expression, Meng Chao attempted to diffuse the mounting tension by questioning if he really needed to follow the regulations if he had no intention of reaching the undergraduate level. The effort proved ineffective, so he suggested they postpone the conversation until after the mental strength test concluded. Both women immediately agreed and promised to treat him to dinner later to continue the discussion. Meng Chao felt the weight of menacing gazes from the surrounding students, while Chu Feixiong remarked on how much everyone hated him, and Jiang Lei lamented that he had two beauties by his side, while the rest of them had none. A woman suddenly appeared on the big screen to demand the attention of the students, announcing that the retest would begin in 3 minutes. Jin Zhanpeng looked absolutely livid as he instructed his schoolmates to keep a close watch on Meng Chao. He insisted that they needed to monitor him throughout the process, and as he turned to look, he saw the two beautiful women still competing for Meng Chao's attention. Jin Zhanpeng started to cry while reiterating the need for constant vigilance. The woman on the screen called for order and requested that everyone take their places according to the information displayed in the aperture beneath their feet. The students followed her instructions, and as Meng Chao looked down, he saw his name and school listed clearly. She told them to relax, breathe, and enter a state of deep meditation. Everyone sat down as instructed, and she warned that anyone who stood, moved, or made a sound would be considered in violation of the exam rules. She added that a first violation would result in a warning, but a second would lead to immediate expulsion from the hall. As Meng Chao settled into the withered wood stance, something began to protrude from the floor near his circle. He watched in surprise as 3 poles emerged from the ground to surround him. The ends of these poles transformed into tentacle-like appendages, and he wondered if he was looking at a superbrain. Unease washed over him as he recognized the familiar form. Anxiety gripped him while the device approached his face, though he reminded himself that as one of the 3 pillars of Dragon City alongside genetic martial arts and spirit technology, the system should have been perfectly secure. Doubts crept back in as the superbrain attached itself to his face. Upon closer inspection, the device appeared drowsy, but its eyes suddenly widened as it activated. Meng Chao was instantly transported into a virtual world where he stood before a monster devouring a woman. His consciousness struggled to adjust to the new environment, and as he looked around, he saw another person being consumed by smaller creatures. Dreadful screams echoed throughout the area. Meanwhile, at the testing center, teachers watched the events unfold on a massive screen. One of them expressed shock at the increased difficulty of the mental strength test that year. Wang Longjun noted that the pain and fear levels were set to 120%, which was the standard used by the Red Dragon Army to select elite Special Forces soldiers. The advisor for 9th High School Class 2 remarked that the war was clearly escalating, and if these students could not survive the virtual test, there was no point in sending them into the depths of the fog to serve as food for the monsters. An operator suddenly announced that Ren Fei from Small River High School dropped below a 40% mental strength index. The situation worsened as the index dipped under 30%, triggering a warning that persisted for over 60 seconds. Because the threshold remained breached, the system judged Ren Fei as a failure and initiated a forced removal from the virtual reality exam room. Inside the simulation, the student collapsed and vomited while a medical team rushed to extract him. Shortly after, Zhao Yikun from Small River High School and Fan Chongxing from Diligence High School also failed their mental strength assessments. As the teachers watched a student get devoured by a monster on the main display, Wang Longjun shook his head and remarked that this year's test proved significantly more difficult than usual. The screen shifted to Jin Jianpeng, who appeared to be performing exceptionally well. His Class 2 advisor boasted that Jin Jianpeng was a proud student of Construction High School with a mind hardened like steel. A teacher from the same school dismissed the carnage as a minor scene for their elite students, leaving the rest of the faculty puzzled and speechless. Suddenly, the Class 2 advisor noticed Meng Chao, whose chart displayed a perfect 100% mental strength average. Meng Chao was surrounded by monsters in the virtual world, which prompted the advisor to comment on his strange performance. The announcer also took note of these anomalous figures, leading one teacher to worry that such stats were not even in the top 10 for Construction High School, while another jokingly questioned if Meng Chao grew up eating monster brains. Back in the virtual world, Meng Chao looked bored and wondered if the test offered anything more challenging. He effortlessly dodged a monster attack, recalling how everyone warned him that the mental strength test was terrifying and filled with disgusting creatures. He leaped into the air, used debris as a stepping stone, and mused that the exam was supposed to scare students enough to make them lose control of their bladders. After landing on the back of a monster, he felt amused and found the creatures rather average and even pleasant to look at. He squatted on the beast with total composure, questioning how such things could possibly frighten anyone. Deciding to make the most of his time, he resolved to use the opportunity for practice. He spotted another monster pouncing toward him with a sword stuck in the ground nearby. Recognizing the setup as a simple game mechanic where items were placed for use, he prepared to jump. He vaulted off the first monster's head, forcing it to take the brunt of the second creature's attack, and maneuvered mid-air to punch the pouncing monster in the face. After a graceful twirl, he landed on the second beast's back and sprinted toward its tail. He slid down the tail with a quick word of thanks before launching himself toward the sword. He skidded across the ground, grabbed the weapon, and used it to anchor himself against the momentum. Meng Chao stood up and gripped his sword. Recalling the advanced variations of the 100 saber techniques he developed with teacher Yan just days prior, he struggled to inflict significant damage on the second monster, which pulled its fangs from the first beast and fixed a menacing glare upon him. A howl echoed through the area as the creature summoned a fresh wave of different monsters. Meng Chao welcomed the challenge, viewing the incoming swarm as the perfect training dummies for his new saber style. As the beasts charged, he sliced one in half with a single swift motion, though he failed to dodge the counterattacks of the others, leaving his arms and legs covered in cuts. When a monster lunged from behind with its jaws wide open, he reacted just in time to carve it into pieces. He eliminated another, but two more immediately closed the distance. Moving with such blinding speed that only his blade arcs remained visible, he dismissed the smaller foes as boring and insisted that only the larger ones provided the resistance he needed for his training. He lunged toward the massive monster, but before he could land his strike, its tail pierced his body. The creature flicked its tail, sending him crashing into a pile of rubble, and the system promptly notified him of his death. Wang Longjun lamented the loss while teacher Yan and the Class 2 advisor watched in stunned, worried silence. The teacher from Construction High School merely smiled, but the woman monitoring the data expressed shock as Meng Chao's graph showed a lingering fluctuation despite his vitals dropping to 99.99%. Vision blurry, Meng Chao stared at the monster from the rubble, while the creature turned around with a look of utter confusion. He appeared just as clueless while the resurrection process took hold. Glaring at the beast, he questioned its assessment of his skill level before leaping into the air to attempt the 100 saber techniques once more. The monster swallowed him whole before he could land a hit, and as he struggled inside its maw, one of his shoes fell off and dissolved into pixels upon hitting the ground. He reappeared behind the monster, leaving the creature visibly baffled and surprised. Embarrassed by the turn of events, he expressed his own shock. The monster opened its jaws to devour him again, but he charged forward to force his technique through. Wang Longjun and teacher Yan watched in total confusion, while the other teachers questioned his combat ability, doubting that anyone with such a strong spirit and high-level skills could exist at 9th High School. Teacher Yan alone understood that Meng Chao was using the test to experiment with radical, unproven techniques, and he grew anxious over the risk of failure. The Class 2 advisor wondered what kind of monster Meng Chao truly was, given that he died repeatedly without his mental strength index fluctuating by more than 10%. The instructor from Construction High School urged everyone to observe closely because the 100 saber techniques utilized by the 9th High School students operated on a completely different level. The monster lay lifeless on the ground with its mouth shredded into pieces and a blade firmly embedded in one of its eyes. Meng Chao stood over the carcass, gasping for air and drenched in sweat, when the system suddenly pinged with a notification. The 100 saber technique version 7.3.5 was currently spreading among the elite, granting him contribution points since future students and teachers would eventually master even more powerful variations. Resting on the monster's back, he realized his hunch was correct about top-tier instructors like Teacher Yan monitoring his performance in the exam room. He knew turning in the test early was not an option, so he pondered how to best utilize his remaining time while practicing his saber skills. Glancing at the fallen creature, he deduced that the mental strength test relied on data from the Monster Research Center, meaning the internal anatomy of these virtual beasts perfectly mirrored their real-world counterparts. A grin spread across his face as he gripped his sword, fully aware that the conflict was about to escalate. With an ominous expression and the crushing weight of limited time, he decided to use these monsters to push his basic harvesting skill to perfection. Moments later, he stood over the creature with a look of pure fulfillment, admiring the sparkling organs and nerves exposed by his precise work. It was an ideal training ground, though the current supply of monsters felt insufficient. A sudden noise from behind the nearby buildings snapped his attention toward the source. Massive claws and gigantic insect legs tore through the scenery, leveling the structures that previously stood in his path. His eyes twinkled with delight at the arrival of a second wave, and he charged forward, eager to grind out more proficiency. Meanwhile, the teachers watching the screen shivered in silence, collectively turning their gaze toward Teacher Yan, who nervously wondered why they expected him to explain such an impossible display. The announcer checked the clock, noting 5 minutes and 12 seconds remaining. As the final seconds ticked away, she declared the test concluded for those who survived, explaining that the remaining time was reserved for optional individual challenges of increasing difficulty. Chu Feixiong exited the virtual world, completely exhausted, and immediately scanned the rankings. Seeing his name at 443rd place, he celebrated his success, but his excitement vanished when he turned to find Meng Chao still logged into the simulation. A sense of unease washed over him as he watched Meng Chao wearing a lewd smile, leaving him to wonder what kind of chaos was unfolding inside. Zhang Lei arrived shortly after, admitting that while the situation seemed impossible, he suspected there was a method to the madness. A fellow student from 9th High School approached Chu Feixiong to praise his impressive performance, noting that his high score secured him a spot in the top 500 across the entire region. When asked about his training secret, Chu Feixiong admitted he barely trained at all. Instead, he explained that he simply pictured the two seniors who competed over Meng Chao and pasted Meng Chao's face onto the head of every monster he fought. This mental trick fueled a fiery rage that pushed him to charge forward and pummel the monsters with relentless intensity. Zhang Lei chimed in with tears in his eyes, confessing that he lacked such ruthlessness. He explained that Meng Chao had already dealt 10,000 cuts to his heart before the virtual test even began, so every terrifying monster he faced felt like just another minor sting. Other students nearby sobbed in agreement, sharing the same sentiment. Meng Chao suddenly walked over to ask how the test went. Rather than answering, Chu Feixiong shot back by questioning if Meng Chao struggled with the test as well. Meng Chao casually dismissed the challenge, claiming he stopped playing because the sheer volume of monsters felt like a chaotic morning rush hour. Both Chu Feixiong and Jiang Lei stared in comical confusion at the idea of someone treating the high-stakes exam like a casual game. The mood shifted when someone pointed out the updated supernatural rankings. The top 20 spots belonged entirely to students from Construction High School, but their dominance ended at the 21st place where Meng Chao appeared. Jiang Lei wept at the realization that those elite students who practiced in the virtual system daily were still no match for Meng Chao. A loud thud echoed as Jin Zhongpeng slammed his fist into the concrete, leaving a massive dent. He cursed in frustration until the student president, Luo Hai, approached to demand an explanation for such a miserable failure. Luo Hai expressed deep disappointment, calling Jin Zhongpeng a waste of the resources invested in him due to his weak mental fortitude. Jin Zhongpeng blamed his performance on one specific guy, and a nearby student from Construction High School confirmed that Meng Chao had indeed cracked the top 30. Luo Hai turned his gaze toward Meng Chao, curious if this was the same person who caused such trouble. Chu Feixiong watched with unease as Meng Chao sat nearby, grinning lewdly while checking his growing contribution points. Luo Hai decided they should investigate this supposedly slow-witted student for themselves. Meanwhile, Meng Chao faced a barrage of questions from his peers. Chu Feixiong demanded the truth about his relationship with Yan Feiro, while Wang Tao pressed him on whether he used dirty tricks to get close to Ning Shui from the University of Agriculture. As the crowd turned into a mob of public enemies, they threatened to keep him trapped until he bought them milk tea and confessed everything. Meng Chao grunted and sat on the floor, claiming he originally intended to help them by securing internal information from the agricultural and martial arts universities. He acted out a dramatic display of hurt feelings, which instantly startled the group. The atmosphere shifted from hostility to adoration as the students broke down in tears, hailing Meng Chao as the light of the right path and even declaring him a brother in arms. The atmosphere shifted when a man walked by and left the ladies swooning, while another arrival sent the guys into a state of pure dread. Amidst the tension, Meng Chao spotted the approaching group and immediately pivoted toward Jin Zhongpeng. He grabbed the other boy's hands and insisted that any past misunderstandings needed to be put to rest. Chu Feixiong and Wang Tao watched in total disbelief as Meng Chao refused to let go, arguing that hot-blooded youngsters were bound to have a little competitive friction. Luo Hai observed the display, while Meng Chao emphasized that they would soon be fighting side by side in the trenches against vicious monsters. With a look of earnest concern, he pointed out how brutal the mental strength test had been, claiming the education department only pushed such an insane challenge because the coming war demanded it. Since a real conflict loomed on the horizon, fighting among themselves felt completely meaningless. Jin Zhongpeng stood there, looking bashful yet deeply annoyed and utterly speechless, especially after the recent cycle of threats and humiliation. Meng Chao's classmates signaled their approval with secret thumbs-ups, clearly impressed by his bold move. The rest of the Construction High School students began to agree that unity was the only logical path forward, leaving Meng Chao to relish the small contribution he made toward the harmony of Dragon City. The moment of peace shattered when Yan Feiro and Ning Shui appeared, still locked in their own rivalry over him. They congratulated him on his stellar test results and insisted he join them for a meal. Meng Chao felt blindsided by their sudden arrival, while Jin Zhongpeng's expression darkened as he realized the irony of Meng Chao preaching about unity while being dragged away by two beautiful seniors. The situation grew even more ridiculous as Meng Chao felt his eyes twitch with annoyance, frustrated that the two seniors were actively sabotaging his efforts to keep the peace. Luo Hai stepped forward and extended his arm to introduce himself. Though caught off guard, Meng Chao recovered quickly and shook his hand with a matching introduction. Luo Hai promised that his name would soon carry weight throughout the Tiger Forest region and expressed hope that they would cross paths again after the National College examination. Meng Chao grinned and offered the same well wishes to both Luo Hai and the rest of the Construction High School students. He declared that once everyone understood his true nature, they would realize he preferred a low profile and cared little for fame or personal gain. He remained completely oblivious to the absurdity of his own words as he was hauled away by Yan Feiru and Ning Shui-shi. He continued to insist that he hated putting on a show or humiliating others, claiming his only desire was to contribute to society. The surrounding students watched with growing unease as he preached about peace while being physically dragged off by the two seniors. Jin Zhanpeng complained to Luo Hai about the arrogance of that brat Meng Chao and wondered if they should take action against him. Luo Hai simply suggested that if Jin Zhanpeng possessed the same grasp of competition and unity as Meng Chao, he might actually achieve something significant. A grim expression took over Jin Zhanpeng as he bit his lip to hold back his anger, but Luo Hai glared back with a far more terrifying intensity while demanding to know if his point was understood. After calming down, Luo Hai offered a cold ultimatum. If Jin Zhanpeng disagreed, he was free to attack Meng Chao on his own. However, with a pensive look, Luo Hai bet a single buck that if they were both thrown into the fog, with Jin Zhanpeng fully armored and Meng Chao barehanded, the one who would end up dead was definitely Jin Zhanpeng. The sheer weight of that statement left Jin Zhanpeng horrified and trembling as sweat poured down his face, while the reality of the situation sank in. Meanwhile, Meng Chao tried to decline a dinner invitation from two beautiful seniors, prompting them to ask why he would turn them down. He meekly admitted that they were so stunning that he feared for his life, convinced his classmates would kill him out of jealousy if he were seen with them. Yan Feiru and Ning Shui-shi exchanged a look and teased him, asking if he still wanted the valuable inside information they had prepared. Meng Chao jumped at the chance and even suggested they visit his school to provide guidance on the upcoming college entrance exams, a request they happily accepted. 10 days before the exams, Meng Chao stood before his classmates with a massive stack of papers. He instructed everyone to remain calm and not to grab the materials since the information was meant for everyone, but the crowd immediately ignored him and swarmed the papers. 7 days out, Yan Feiru and Ning Shui-shi arrived at the school to deliver their lectures. By the 3-day mark, Meng Chao stood over his classmates, dusting off his clothes while Chu Feixiong and the others lay defeated on the ground. They expressed their confusion, noting that they had agreed to beat Meng Chao up, yet somehow they were the ones left battered. Meng Chao just smiled maniacally as his system notified him that his first injury had fully healed, leaving him with 7523 contribution points. That evening, as Meng Chao lay in bed, he reflected on how his previous life lacked this experience of centralized attention before the exams. He wept into his pillow while mourning the loss of his comfortable bed. Suddenly, a special alert blared through the facility. The students panicked, completely unaware of any weather warnings regarding monster attacks. The alarm signaled a special grade threat, indicating that multiple space-time rifts had torn open across the city in the worst possible scenario. Meng Chao stared at the dark sky, which was filled with glowing rifts, and found himself speechless. Lightning crackled from the tiers, in reality appearing directly above the detention building. He felt a surge of anxiety and cursed his luck, realizing that in his past life, he had been in a coma in the hospital during this event. Fear gripped him as he realized he had no memory of this specific monster invasion. As the rifts continued to widen, massive tentacles began to emerge, followed by a colossal circular monster covered in small, pulsating eyes. A massive eyeball monster materialized in the sky, identified as a demonic air-ripping eye, and immediately began tearing through the buildings below with its thrashing tentacles. Panic erupted among the students as they scrambled for safety. Meng Chao watched the chaos unfold while others warned that the beast specialized in mental attacks, making eye contact a death sentence. Chu Feiqiong chimed in with the textbook observation that these creatures were supposed to be slow and physically weak, but the reality on the ground told a different story. The students suddenly froze in place, overcome by tears and confusion as they wondered where the army and the legendary superhumans were hiding. Meng Chao stepped in to restore order, urging everyone to focus on their breathing and settle into a meditative stance to clear their heads. A thunderous roar echoed from above, drawing Meng Chao's gaze upward to see a fleet of armored airships descending into the fray. One ship engaged the monster, unleashing a barrage of ammunition that forced the beast to growl in pain. From the airships emerged a team of elite superhumans, including an armored swordsman, a gun-wielding woman, and a warrior armed with a polearm. The swordsman leaped from his vessel and charged headlong toward the monster. Tentacles whipped out to intercept him, but he dodged every strike with ease before unleashing a powerful battle cry and driving his blade straight through the creature's massive eye. He burst out the other side of the monster, causing it to explode in a shower of gore. The woman with the gun watched the display and remarked that the performance was decent enough, though she needed to step up her own game. As she took aim, the monster's tentacles swarmed toward her, but a single shot from her weapon obliterated the target entirely. Chu Feixiong cheered wildly, urging the superhumans to wipe out the rest of the horde. Meng Chao realized this was likely the first time his peers had witnessed such a display of power, which explained their intense excitement. The mood shifted instantly when a student pointed in terror at one of the airships. A demonic air-ripping eye had coiled its tentacles around the vessel and dragged it crashing into the ground. The sight of a fallen steel god shattered the students' morale, and under the influence of the monster's mental assault, their collective fear began to sync up like a virus. They spiraled into despair, questioning how the monsters could be so fast and powerful and wondering who would save them now. Meng Chao recognized that if the panic continued, everyone would collapse, so he needed to stabilize their mental states and boost their morale before it was too late. A war song suddenly blared from the speakers, and Meng Chao smiled as he realized the music was designed to counter the mental interference. He began to sing along, and the other students quickly joined in, their voices rising in unison. The collective effort dispelled the monster's mind attack, and hope returned to their faces as they shouted their resolve to fight for their own survival.